Well, good evening, everyone. It looks like we've got a great crowd tonight. There's about 26 of us on, so welcome, Pennsylvania. It's nice to be with you this evening. My name is Mark Yaden, and I'm a regional trainer for emergency reporting out of the Pacific Northwest. I'm calling you from Kennewick, Washington. Just a brief history on me. I retired last October from the Kennewick Fire Department here in Washington State. I had a 40-year fire service career that ended with Kennewick, where I retired as the deputy chief and fire marshal, and just had a great career. And it was kind of a natural to roll into the training position with emergency reporting. Our agency was with a group of other departments countywide that came in year 2006 onto emergency reporting. So I understand what you're going through when you transition from one program to another, and we look forward to working with you and making that a smooth transition. Tonight we're going to spend an hour here or so just walking through the basics of it, of getting logged on and into the system, as well as setting it up to make it work for you. So welcome. I'd also like to introduce Nicole and Lindsay from our team out of our Bellingham office that are on with me tonight to help answer questions and keep me on track with that. So we should have a great session here, and feel free if you have questions, use that question section in your menu there to send those in, and we'll address those. Anything that I can't answer for you tonight, and I certainly don't profess to know everything about the program. It's a big program and evolving all the time, getting better and better. But if I can't find it out, we've got great programmers and staff out of Bellingham where I can find the answers out and email it back to you with your email address you've signed in with. So appreciate you being here, and we'll get started. This is the screen that I have up that you're seeing right now, that you'll see as far as the PennFIRS program with the 5 modules that's been included. Emergency reporting certainly has more modules in the system, but as part of your free package through the state fire commissioner, this is what you'll be seeing with that. There are some agencies out there that I've spent some time with that do have further modules into it. So if you're interested in upgrading to take on any more of the modules and capabilities of the program, please contact our sales and division on the website. Certainly has their contact information. We'd be happy to show you further into the system. And what I have is, after I'm already logged in, I'm actually going to log out to show you where you would initially go to log into the system. And that's our main website is the emergencyreporting.com. And when you're on that home page, in the upper right here, you'll see the login section. If I hit that, it's going to take me right to this login page. Now you'll notice what changed here on my address here. It just put the word secure.emergencyreporting.com in there. So the word secure went in. So this is the page I would recommend you bookmark or make a shortcut on your desktop. Certainly it's appropriate if you want to go to the main page and look at anything there and then hit login. But if you want a shortcut getting right directly to the login page, you can. This would be the address you'd want to use for that shortcut. So I've created, for the purpose of tonight, out of one of our test accounts, a PennFIRS user, just that it would be in your system there. So now I'll log in as that. And that'll take us to our main home page, where this will come up. And what I really want to encourage everyone, of course, on the left, to view a couple of the support tabs and the help tab I'm going to talk about. Certainly on the left takes you directly to the modules that you'll have as part of your package, the incidents reports, the library, my profile, and administration. But when you're first setting up your system to populate your pull-down menus and have the system work the way you need it to, one of the things that's very helpful is under the support tab. if you go to that, it takes you to what's called our knowledge base. That's a series of articles that are very helpful in system setup. You'll see it broken down by module, but as you get into it and click any one of these things, it'll take you to great articles that are in there, and like module access permissions. If I was to go in there, it'll give further definition of how you can set somebody up in your system. It'll walk you through, show you photographs and everything, or screenshots of those different things on anything that you want to see in our system. You can also search by the keywords in here. If I wanted something on incidents, I could type that in there and see everything about incidents, from user knowledge articles taking me all the way through webinars that are on the system. And one of the things that we do as free training is the first and the third Thursday of each month is what we call our virtual Thursdays. And that's something that you can get set up in, sign up. All it takes is an email address and your name on there. You can watch those webinars that'll take each module and break that down further, and one of our regional trainers hosts that, and it's an excellent chance for you to see those features in action. And a lot of times we'll have live accounts from departments on there where subject matter experts from those agencies that are using it will be talking about their setup. So if I want to go out of the knowledge base, I can go back just on like a basic browser. I can go back to the page where I was at and walk it all the way back to that first page, or I can close that page, or I can be in there. So if the webinars that I brought up at the bottom of the knowledge base, you can see our archives of those Thursday webinars, where you can go in. If you miss one, no worries, they're posted usually within 2 weeks of the time they happen, and you can see the different modules that again come in here. And again, I'll do a keyword search where it takes you right back to the same thing. So you can look at those webinars. I really encourage you to have your staff look at that and do that. That would give them what they need. It's obviously in a 1 hour webinar, we can't cover everything. So it's always good to go back, look at that, find a webinar on your setup, whatever module you're in, and it gives you the advanced information that you really need to know to have it be a success. Another excellent resource that I go to regularly, even as a regional trainer, is to hit the Help tab. That is going to, in most cases, take you right to the page. It recognizes where you're at. I qualify that with saying in most cases. There are some our newer features where it'll take you back to the knowledge base with the hyperlink in there, but we'll talk about our home screen now, but it also, when I go to Help, it's going to show everything that we'll discuss here as far as what I'm seeing there, my notifications, daily log. So that's an excellent resource where it'll take you, walk you right through the program. Basically look at this as being like our owner's manual. Instead of sending you a thick book, you'll be able to see electronically all the different features of the system and laid out to help you set it up. And this takes you to similar, what I call like a PDF type document. You can't use your browser to go back. So if you're in the help screens, I can either click on that and go back and leave help up. A lot of times that's really helpful if you're doing something in the system and you have two screens. If you want to have the help tab up on one screen and your program up in the other, you can walk right through setting it up or trying to determine what's the proper steps next on what you're trying to do. And of course our logout, which will take you right back to the logout screen that we had in there. This is our post your own idea about things of how we can improve the program or how you're using it, how you'd like it to do something differently. It's just huge and resource for us. We listen to our users. That's how the majority of our updates to the system and improvements in it come through. Is we want to hear from you what you need it to do and to make it work. It's a daily part of your operation and have it be the most efficient and effective for you. So probably right now you won't be exercising this too much until you really get knowing the program, but at any time you can go and post your ideas and suggestions to us. We do track all of that, and updates come as a result of that. And we'll talk about that under some system updates here in just a minute. This icon here is our notifications center, which if it has an internal email as part of your PennFIRS program, you don't have that message center in there, so it's, unless you have an upgrade, it won't be available. If I come down to further on my page here, you'll see the system updates. There's about 4 different types of notices that you can get here. This one is going to tell us about system updates that are posted in there too, on a couple of times a month. Typically, we'll have upgrades that'll get posted. The nice thing about this system is anytime you log in, you're getting the latest and the greatest of what's there. So it's not a program that you have to do updates on your end. We're doing that for you behind the scenes, but we want you to know what's in there. Anything you'll see in our system is that's orange is a hyperlink that's going to take you somewhere in the program to give you some information. So if I select that, here's what it's telling me happened with this latest system update. And you can see there was quite a bit on the different modules that are there, from demographics, imports, instance library, maintenance, training. So look through those. If you've got the modules that are applicable, I encourage you to do that, because that will tell you, such as our reports here that have changed and had some features added to them. There may be things in the system you're exercising today that just have gotten better that you won't know until you either run across it, or you can go into here and know what's updated. We post those. You can see by date. I can go to any one of these and find the updates on the maintenance module, so you can go right down the list and pick, and you can see what's changed or improvements to the system. So I encourage you to read those. I've had some users say, oh, well, we just assumed it was similar to junk mail type things. That's really not. There's great helpful information on there, important updates about that. So do take advantage of that and read those when they come in. When you have that and you've read it and you're comfortable, you're not going to need to read any further. All you've got to do is hit the X there, and then it comes out of the system or off of your home page. So you should see when anybody's logged in, each user is an individual user. I believe we have over 90,000 individual users now in the system. So when I'm logged in, Mark PennFIRS is the name of the person I have here that I'm logged in as, and so you should see your name and the time you can have there. Make sure everything is correct. And one of the things that gives you the ability to do, if you have a multi-department, multiple shift type of application, if you have the toggled on, it allows, if I'm working at station 2 today, but if I come into station 3 and work an overtime shift for somebody, if they're on sick leave or on vacation, I could actually change to show what station I'm working out of that day. And that's applicable to this daily log that we'll talk about here in a minute, that recognizes whatever your assignment is up here, that's going to go be on that station's log. It doesn't change you anywhere else in the system, but it's applicable to this log here, and that'll be up to your agency whether you want to give that ability or not to do. One of the things that we ran into, and I've seen over the years, is people will change the station route where they're working, which is great, but then when they're back to their normal station, the next shift, they forget to go in here and change it back, and what they're putting on the log then shows up on the station of where they had changed it to. So be completely at the discretion of an agency whether you want to give them the ability to do that. Anybody coming into the system can change their password at any time. And the password is very robust. You can have, as an administrator, you can set where they have 6 characters all the way out to 20 characters, depending upon the needs of your agency. Our system is HIPAA compliant and meets all the standards for that, as well as we really had increased our integrity of the program when we started being a contractor for the Department of Defense. We're on over 150 military bases for the U.S. military around the world, and so that has really increased what their requirements are for a system in encryption. So I can assure you we're a solid system that's there, that's up and ready for you all the time. The password, somebody could get in and change it every day if they wanted to, but that's one where you'll set your users up with a generic password the first time, and I'll show you how to make that to where once you give them a generic password, they can log in with that, and the system's going to make them immediately change that password to give it their own special character. It's unique to them. Nobody at our home office, programmers, anybody in the system can see there, to include your own administrator in your agencies. Nobody sees their password. That's completely confidential with them, so we encourage people not to have multiple people signing in under the same user and password. Everybody's a unique user, and the system recognizes wherever you're at in it who is logged in. So you certainly don't want somebody logging in under your name and then going in, being in and working in the system. So that's one where they can change it there at any time and able to do that. Now the change my notifications here on your system notifications just gives you further down the screen here what you want to see when you first log in. What's down here will certainly be found in every module that you'll see if you wanted to go in the module and search for it and find it, but there are specific information that you may want your personnel to have when they first log into the system and see it. And at any time, let me know if my screens are too small for you to see. I'm going to try and increase this a little bit to see you can see it. A couple of important ones when they come in: display number of incomplete incidents assigned to me. So if they've started a incident report and the system has saved it in there, but it's incomplete, needing to be completed, if that's toggled, they'll be able to see that report. It'll be right on their home screen, letting them know what they have. The second one, the display number of incidents to be reviewed. If you're an officer or somebody in your agency administrator that's a reviewer of incident reports, and you have that option that once they complete them, somebody else takes a look at them for the QA, QI side of things, they can check that. This is probably not applicable to your PennFIRS system here, but if you were on had a report that had a patient with it, a fire with a burn, for example, and you were utilizing the patient care report in there, that will assign it to whoever was assessing them. If that was checked, then they would see also the patient care reports that they would be the ones having to complete it. So for the purpose here, we're going to assume I'm an officer in the organization, and I'm going to not only want to see what's assigned to me, but also what I need to get in and review. So if I click save on that, you'll see how my screen changed, and you can see what I have waiting for me. I have 3 incomplete incidents telling me there, so it just saved me from having to get in here and check that. And I have 1 incident waiting for me to be reviewed. Now when I click on that hyperlink, it's going to take me right to those incidents. So even though there's more in the system, it's just going to take me to the ones that are applicable, and I could open any one of them up then and be able to get in and complete that report. And we'll walk through an incident report where you'll be able to, and actually do one where you'll be able to see that. So that's helpful. You'll see in our system there's going to be incomplete, which is when you first get it in, and if it's red, or that's the incident reporting is PennFIRS compliant with the National Fire Incident Reporting System. So that means that there's information in there from PennFIRS that needs to be filled in there before it'll allow that to be exported or closed. If it's yellow, it'll go to complete, meaning it's complete, but waiting for whoever's going to be in the organization reviewing that. And then once they've reviewed it and lock it, it'll go to green. And we'll see examples of that. So getting back to where I was at again, I can either go back to the home page and find that, or I can click my browser button back and it'll take me right back to where I was at. And by the way, something I forgot to mention, if you have access to the internet, you have our program. So if you've got a tablet, an iPad, a laptop, your workstation, anything you can get to the internet on, you have the full function of the program as you see it now. A smartphone, I could be logged in looking at this. Of course, right now, on a smartphone, this would be pretty difficult to navigate the fields just because of the size of them, but you can certainly do it. It's just someday we'll likely have an app that then brings that down smaller for the actual phone itself. But in any device that you have that you can get the internet, you can get this program. So again, if I have one waiting to be reviewed, it's going to take me to that one incident. There you can see the complete incident, so it tells me it's done. The firefighter or officer, whoever put it in, they've done everything they need. It's PennFIRS compliant. It's just waiting review. So the daily log is a really nice feature. It basically, I think of the days early on in my career, every fire station had a logbook. The station officer was required to complete it line by line, everything that we did over the course of a day, just for accountability, to show the activities we were on. Problem with that, it was great, you had it all documented, but if you wanted to show how many hours did we spend on a certain activity in a year, or when did we do something and who was involved with it, you couldn't. The logbooks, you just literally had to read through them. So now this takes that daily log, and actually you can do the same thing but electronically and give you the full search features. So if I want to use that, it's going to assume that I want to see just the log of what I'm doing in my station. So this is going to be for station 2. If I want to see the entire department, if it's applicable, if you have multiple stations, you can show all. Of course, with that, my log is going to be a lot longer if I'm looking at the others, but if you're a battalion chief especially, or an officer wanting to see what the other departments are doing on their log, you can get in and look at that. But by default, it'll be show current station. If I'm going to add something in the log, I simply hit that. Anytime you see something red in our system, that means that's a minimum required to be able to save and document the event. Here, it'll automatically come up with the date. And obviously, if I was to save this right now, it wouldn't be of much value to me of pulling any reports out on it later, showing who did what and where, because of the lack of information. So all these hyperlinks, I can set it for. If I do it right now, I can timestamp it with the date and time, and it would be the same thing down here. Let's change this time to we'll call it 1822. It'll allow you to go into the future, but your daily log, remember, you could get in there and put activities that you know you're going to be doing, but ahead of time in the log. But it's set for, the intent of it is what you're doing now and over the course of your shift for that. So it's usually you're tracking what has happened as opposed to things in the future. But if you did want to put things in where you knew something was going to be coming up, it certainly would allow you to do that. And selecting an activity code, what you're going to get with your program are some samples here that you'll be able to populate that, which will be applicable to you. These are things that a lot of departments will want to track: their physical fitness, or their station tours, or public education, or meetings, city council meetings, officers meetings, on and on. Any detail you can see here, from working on equipment to the stations, your properties, to meeting with the public. All of these can be changed, and I'll show you where you get into your program to be able to do that. Here we're going to say that's a virtual classroom, and you can put in the information in there. Typically it's a sentence or two just to say what it is, because we're going to already have it by activity code, what it is there. It does have spell check, which I was trained to be a firefighter, not in English, so that was a spelling challenge. So there it gives the ability to add words to your dictionary, or be able to do that. So it's a good feature. And you can assign an apparatus if it's applicable to an apparatus on something like this, where you have a group of people. I recommend just going by that. So, and a lot of times they're wanting, firefighters wanting to pick 2 or 3 apparatus as the group came together, but it will limit it to one selection as far as apparatus, but it's not mandatory you have it in. I'm just going to check me, especially if I was the only one that was doing this, but it'll allow me with other users. The personnel list then will come up, and I could sit and pick other people that were in the training with me. And once I have them, I can either go to the top or bottom, hit submit, and then add that log. This is what's going to come on. Now I'm able to, under the reports module, I can pull out any of these log details by activities, who did the activity, how many times, how many hours. So it's all those things that you track over the course of the time that you want to track in your agency for budgeting and program accountability, as well as your staffing and on that as to the hours you're spending on different things to make adjustments administratively there with all of that. So it's a very powerful tool, so I do encourage using that. And then if you have something on there, since I've got administrative rights in the program as a trainer, I'm able to delete that off of there. You'll be able to set up the access rights to all of your users as to what they can delete and what they can enter in and have access into the system, and we'll get to that here shortly. Also on incidents, when they complete an incident report, and as soon as that's complete, it'll populate down here with the incident, and I may have an example of that even in this count. Let's go back a couple of days. I thought I did. Sorry, I guess I don't. So you could go back just like this. It would show you the logs from those dates. So the next part of your system that you'll want to get in before you're really using it is get into the administration side of things. That's where you can populate your pull down menus. You'll see like in what we had there for the log, as well as adding your stations, your apparatus. Now with your import, where you're going to have a lot of information put in, a lot of that's going to come over with it, with your incidents, as well as your personnel and apparatus. But I have seen on the imports that are coming in, there may be things in our fields that we have that the other program didn't, that would be blank, that you'll want to get in and check them just to make sure that the minimum required is there. So these are the things. Most of these are related on the incident side of things, where you can that may be related to like medical protocols. All of these things will come up to there. But when you get down now in your incident reporting to required fields, this is telling me what are the things that I want to do or have that may be in addition to. It turns on the incident report the field red. The field is still there if you haven't checked this. It's just that it will turn it red as a mandatory field before you can complete that incident report. Here what's checked that comes over is the en route and date time. So if you want to have your response times as far as your initial dispatch time, your time of call, and then your dispatch to show the time they left the station, that would mandatory, that would be checked. You can also just come down here if you want a city code, the shift or platoon, county code. If you're going to set up zones in your incident reporting, a geographic zone, that would be checked. Again, your report will allow you to put all of this in, but it just turns that field then required. Most departments now are wanting to know that en route time and date required, so that will come up. So as soon as you've selected what you have, what you want there, I could have taken that off and had required none of them, but it'll show me that I'm saved there. Now to get back where I was at, I can either go on my bar up here and go back, or I can simply come up and go right back to the administration tab and take me in there. So we were under required fields. User defined fields are, here's some samples that I have in this test account that if I wanted to put in there, that's information you're tracking that you want to have locally, but it's not required by PennFIRS, and it's going to be stripped out of the incident when you send it for export. That's not going to go to PennFIRS, but you want the data locally to be able to do that. Here would be an example of if you wanted to track mileage from a station, or was the fire investigation team deployed, or it could be a type of EMS or a type of fire, or did we use a certain piece of equipment. It's whatever you want to have in there that you can have that. These would be, if I would enable it and say that I want to do it, these two are archived, so they wouldn't even be on there. This is the only one that's active right now. It would put it right on the bottom of my incident report in red. They'd have to complete that question before they could complete it. So it puts those at the bottom of that. And if I wanted to add something on there, I would just select add a field, and the question, the sequence of what I wanted, if you had multiple questions, whether it's a required field or not, and the answer type, whether it's a selection or they do a type in. So it's a pretty handy feature. It's there if you want to be able to use it. If not, you certainly don't have to. It's an option. And a lot of times on the user-defined fields, you may want a special study to be conducted on something that's happening at the time, so they'll come on and be there for a period of months or how long ever it's on, and then they turn it off after they've gathered their information. It gives you the ability to do that. Here's an important one, that instant complete notification. We saw where I checked it on my notifications there. This is just the prompts for submitters when marking instance incomplete. So it just, anytime an incident is incomplete, we want you to know that, the user to know that it's still sitting there, and it just prompts. The default is on that. You could set a no, but it would then not let them know that about incomplete incidents the way that it does if it's checked yes. And this is relating to, in the system part of the PennFIRS, you don't have hydrants, which you're certainly taking advantage of, which is great, as your NFIRS import gives you the ability to take those past incidents that are out of another program in past years, and you'll have it in your data here to where you'll be able to run reports off it and have your history. And this exports just it gives you the ability to export your information within our system to access database. The daily log settings, this is where the activity code list, this is where you can go in and customize that for you. These are all examples that are in here that you could, if you see one and you like it, you can keep it. If you don't use that, if it's not applicable, just simply delete it. And get that list down. If I wanted to add an activity code, I would simply just put in whatever the code is and the code title, just a little more definition here, save that, and you have it. Our daily log rollover time. This is where that daily log, right now it's set on for a calendar day. As for the daily log where we're importing there on the home screen, it's set to at midnight, then it'll roll over. If you've got an agency that has like a 24-hour shift where they're working from, say, 8 o'clock shift change in the morning till the next day, then you'd want to cover that entire shift in your log. You would have your log at 0800 then on there to save that. So it gives you the ability of whatever time that shift change is that you'd have it. And so they're not having to do multiple days with their log to capture it if you have shift change like that expands a 24-hour time period or past midnight. But again, completely at your discretion as to the time you want that log to roll over. The default activity codes as part of PennFIRS, you don't have training, so this wouldn't be applicable, but like for my incidents, to have them populate that daily log, I would want this default to go into the log. And so anytime I do an incident report, that's going to show up as that crew who was on it as part of that incident that'll be on the log. So under department settings, your account settings, this is where you can get in. You can see my account here, this test account, I got it for 6 hours. That means if I walk away from my computer, how long until it makes me log back in. That can be set anywhere from 20 minutes to 6 hours. 6 hours is pretty long. Most agencies, what I've seen in my past agencies, we ended up settling on the 1 hour because that still is a significant amount of time that you can have a computer there open that somebody could come in and log into you're already logged in, be utilizing your account. But the 20 minutes often is pretty short. Somebody comes and talks to you, you're on a different subject or a fire inspection or something like that, that can click by and now it logged you out of the system and you got to get back in. So you can set that for that time frame from 20 minutes out to 6 hours, whatever administratively you feel is appropriate. It gives you the ability to set their password expiration to where they've got to come up with a new password. We're set at 180 days here, but that can be from 1 month out to 1 year. They can't go longer than 365 days before the program's going to make them refresh that password with a new one. The lockout is just for the period of inactivity. 8 months it's set right now, but that would be a user that would get locked out of the system if they haven't used it, and just simply to where they would need the system administrator on your end to let them back in and unlock them. And what our policy is if anybody calls emergency reporting to do that, we send them right back to your system administrator. That prevents somebody that's not supposed to be in the system that you possibly have locked out, that they can't call through us and get it. We're going to send them right back to your agency administrator that's going to work with them to get them back into the system. Again, that can be taken anywhere from 1 month out to a year before that would happen. Your password set right now by default at 6, but you can take that out to 20 characters if you wanted to. And this is where I had checked if it's appropriate for you, the change, shift, and station. If you want to do that on that front daybook page, your welcome page. And then this is enable profile access to all personnel files for all users on the account. Now the way that's worded, to me it sounds like you'd be able to read anybody else's personnel file on the account, and that's not. It's just, we'll look at it here in a few minutes. It's enabling me as a user to be able to look at what you have on me as far as my records on my emergency contact, my address, my work phone, my private phones, whatever you have in the system, that I can check that to make sure it's accurate. And if it's not, I can't change any of it, but I can view my personal information, and then I would go to the system administrator if anything wasn't right in there, which typically happens when somebody moves or has a new phone number and they forget to update it with the administrator, and then they'll see that that's wrong. So we'll go back into, let's see, we've got also the department logo. This is where a JPEG of your agency goes in here. You just choose a file if it's on your computer or network, wherever that's at, just a simple JPEG file. That will populate now my incident reports, my reports that I bring up, any document that I print out of the system. So it just personalizes it, makes it your agency. So I encourage you to do that. It will still work without that there, but it's just going to be a very generic looking report without your specific patch. And again, if not doing incident reporting as part of PennFIRS, so local time settings, just make sure mine here in the Pacific Northwest, I'm set there. That should have all been set up probably when your system was first set up with our support team, but that's where you can get in and change if need to and make any adjustments in your time setting. Personnel list. This is where you add people into the system. You'll get this grid where you can go in and look at by individual and sort it by name, or you'll be able to see here's their logins. You can't see. I'm logged in as there's PennFIRS mark right there. That shows my login, does not show my password. So this is the information you will have on them. If you need to edit an existing user, would be going over here. Much of our program, you can hit anywhere on the line, you'll go in there. If you would be on I'm going to go back to where I was at. If you were on like an iPad or a tablet that doesn't have the full JavaScript, like the regular computer does, it would make you actually have to come to the edit button. But since I'm on my PC, all I've got to do is hit that to be able to open it up. So if you're going to add a person, this will tell whether they're active, inactive, or archived. And the reason why I bring that up is I had a PennFIRS account that I was doing onboarding for the other day, and they were wondering, well, boy, it's showing in this the import that they have, a lot of people that are retired or resigned from the department, maybe even deceased, that they were wondering they were wondering if they'd show them as inactive. You can archive, that would be appropriate for that. It doesn't delete them, even though it shows a trash can, and it says delete user, it actually puts them in an archive status where it doesn't show them on your grid. You can go back later, bring them out of archive. In Washington State, we're required to keep medical information on an employee for 30 years from the time they left service, so and have that history. So that's where you go into those archived individuals and pull them up. Inactive would be if they're typically long-term leave, or maybe they're going to be out for 2-3 weeks or months. You would decide what would be appropriate there, but you can show them they're still in the system, can log in, they're just inactive to where it won't populate other parts of it if you're doing like a day book or showing them on duty. And then active is typically where you're going to select that, seeing your active people, but I could show all if I wanted to. And in this account, you can see anything that's green. That was when we were testing, and I've done some users that are in here where if I wanted to take any one of them out of that mode, I could take them out from that, and now they're in there and back in the system to where I can have them and they're in my grid. So if I'm going to add a person to initially set them up, the minimum, again, is red is what's required. And so just their name, we'll get them in there. As far as that, now you'll notice there's lots of information, so it's as much or as little as you want to track of what's in here. Many agencies have an HR department that has all this information, so they may put it in the system or may not. But certainly by their rank and division and station is helpful for their day book with that amount of information, but I don't have to put that in if I opt not to, or their photo and any of the things that you see down here. And the payroll modules aren't applicable for PennFIRS, so as soon as I hit save, you're going to see more tabs then that will come up along here. So now that I've done that, now this person's in my system, but I need to give them access rights for what's appropriate for how they're going to be interacting with the modules, and that'll take me to the security screen. Right now I'm on no access. That would be, you may have users that are in your program that have no access. An example of that would be you've hired someone and they're going to go off to a recruit academy. They won't actually be back working in your agency for maybe 2 months or longer down the road. So you've got them in the system, but you don't want them logging in, or they've got no application for them to be logging in when they're away. So they're there ready to go. As soon as now they come back, you can say has access, or if a new user in that's going to be starting that day and they want it, and you're going to set them up right away. This is where you can give them the login. That can be either letters or numbers, however you want to do it. Typically, an agency will come up with a lot of them are the first initial last name or whatever variation you want to have on that. If you've got, this is recognizing everybody in that ER family, so those 90,000 users. So it's no different than if you're setting up a Yahoo or a Gmail account or Hotmail, where it'll if you're trying to use a login that somebody else already has, it's going to give you the message that you need to select another one or add to it. So a lot of agencies, in that case, they may put some numbers in there, or KFD M. Yaden. M. Yaden was my login with my previous department. So if we had a couple of Smiths in the agency, so you get those common names, a lot of times you'll have to put a couple more characters to have it. Or I do like the example of the abbreviation of the department, the KFD. I thought that's been pretty creative. I've seen agencies that eliminates, even with a lot of the common names, having a repeat in our system. But once you come up with the scheme that you want them to use to be able to do that, that's when you can give them a generic password. And typically that's going to be, if I'm going to change the password on that, it's going to be giving them whatever that generic password is that puts them in. They'll log in then as their login, and they'll be able to get in that first time. Now if I leave that with that, they can continue using that password, and that's fine. But now you've got somebody that could take that generic password, and if they know the login scheme here, they could log in as somebody else. So the best thing to do is hit reset password. That puts it to where they will have to change their password as soon as they log in. Won't take them into the system any further than lets them log in and has them change it up. This next level down is for incident reporting, and you have the 4 accesses. You can have no access, so they can't enter calls and access it normally at all to look at anything. So as a submitter, they can enter a call, and as a supervisor, they can enter the call and review it. So typically, like your officers or whoever it's going to be, and it could be a firefighter, but whoever you want to have be able to not only look at calls but be able to lock them as saying, yep, they're PennFIRS compliant, good to go, we're going to export them, and the information the QA and QI is done on it to whatever degree your agency does. If they have the system administrator rights, they can do everything the supervisor can, but they can also unlock exported calls and unlock calls. And on the exported calls, that would be one. That's an example. As a fire marshal, I would have maybe learn information that would change the incident coding down the road as that investigation progressed. Sometimes several months later, you'd have that updated information. It gives you the ability as the administrator to, in our system, you can now go into that incident, make the changes you need to, lock it back up, and then re-export it to PennFIRS, and it'll overwrite what they have then, and it'll give it the updated information. Now this is all the module access below incident reporting that they can have. And you can either give them full access, no access, full access to the modules that are applicable to PennFIRS, or they can have it be read-only or limited. So again, with PennFIRS, that's really not very applicable, a lot of those different modules, but the ones that you do have, let's take reports as an example. It's only going to give you two options. They can either do reports and run them or have no access to it. However, what you decide is appropriate there. The My Profile, when we go into that module, that's where they can see the information that I discussed, and I'll show you the wellness behavior policies now that as part of NFPA 1500 features of our system, where you can reset the checklist when they check them, showing it gives the ability for you to see, here's 10 different policies that we have out there for compliance. They've got to read them and acknowledge that, and electronically they can check that they've read them and they understand it, and we'll look at how that works. So that's their security. The contact tab is where all their specific information. It's telling me I need to do a login here. I didn't have the login, so it gave me that error message just saying that I still needed to do that. But it does take me to the next window. That's where I have my emergency contact, my personal contact, and all the different work address that I can have, add emails, phone numbers to be able to have that in there. And whatever their work number is, that's on the main grid what it's looking for. So even if it's a cell phone, go ahead and put it in there if that's the number you want to contact them at. Because if it's on mobile, that front grid won't pull that number, but it's looking for whatever you designate as their work number in the personnel grid to pull it over, as well as their email. You can put in multiple emails for them, but it's going to look at whatever the last email you put in there to save to that grid. So if you enter their work email, put in a second one that's their personal email, if they want that in the system, if that's the last one saved, it's going to pull it up. So just make sure that whatever the last one you put in there is applicable for their work. The notes is just kind of a personnel file type information. Certainly it's great to have it to add entries on awards, or maybe the letter came from a citizen that you want to track and document that. So the attaboys, so to speak, that they maybe get. Disciplines, you've got it also down here. If you put something in here, it does timestamp it on any of these. It looks like as to who's putting it in, then you can just free text what's in there. But remember, anything that's under the disciplines there, anybody that has administrative rights to be able to get into this is going to be able to see it. So it's typically, if you put anything in here, say an example would be somebody that had an accident with one of the department apparatus, you may put, accident on whatever date, see safety report and whatever the number would be. But it would need to be just on the HR side of things, very cryptic to where you wouldn't have personal information. And again, most departments are utilizing a HR department or personnel files that they're going to track in a different way. History is just their history in the organization. With that, their employment history. If I put in a new entry, I can do the start date. So for promotions, their start dates, that it'll track that. It also tracks number of years in the EMS side of things that they've had their certification. And speaking of certifications, this is the tab where you would go in and actually add that. They can't get in and add it for themselves, but they can. They bring that to you, or the training officer, or somebody in your agency that may have administrative rights to do it. That's where you'd see underneath here their certificate. It can be in there, and you can have the ability then to be able to do that. And I see we may have a technical problem that audio is cutting out. And so hopefully is everybody, if I can ask Lindsay or Nicole if they're on, are you hearing me okay?
It was a little fuzzy, but it's better fixed now.
Is it better now? Okay, sorry about that. Go to the webinar and go to meeting both, I've noticed we've had some technical difficulties today that I've had on it as well as the other day, so I don't know what's happening there. So I appreciate you guys letting me know if there's something that's coming on. But you're hearing me loud and clear now then? Okay, good. And I do see we have another question there on red fields. How about if I'll finish with this tabs here, and then we'll look at questions, making sure up to this point I've answered what's coming in. So the certification, if I was going to add a new entry, that's where I could just the certificate name, the date granted, the expiration date, and then this is where I would go if I actually had one to be able to select it, find it wherever it was on my computer, and add it in there if it was scanned. And so that's not limited to the number of certifications you have. Again, this is under the admin tab, sets this information up. They'll be able to look at it here when they go to the My Profile tab. We'll take them to where they can look at the information that I had in there, the contact info, and that way they can help you keep up their information. They can't change anything, but they can look at it and see if that's right, as well as this is that NFPA, the wellness policies, where if I've got all those checked, that I've read them and I understand these different policies or SOPs or SOGs, whatever you may have, that's where electronically they can track that. And please disregard this little lock here. I've got a password keeper on my computer that helps me stay straight on all my passwords. That's not part of our system. That's part of my computer here. Looking at our questions, there was 3 in there related to the audio. Sorry about that. Now, can we set more fields are read for my super? Let's see. In the administration module, there is not the ability to require. So that's been answered. More data to be entered in personnel info. In the system, all PennFIRS fields are required and others can be made optionally required. So I appreciate, Lindsay, that you answered that question. And right, as far as setting more fields read, it's just those ones that you have as part of your initial setup there. All the rest are all related to be PennFIRS compliance. Those are the red fields you have there. So under these required fields, that's going to be PennFIRS, and then whatever the options are here that you set, but it's limited to that as to how many you can actually make mandatory. The fields are there, they can still fill them in, so as a local agency, you can train your staff that here's the additional ones you want to have filled in, but they wouldn't be red. And I hope that answered that question. So we looked at my profile there. How about if we get in, we're actually going to do an incident report. Since I've got my screen enlarged a little bit, I'm kind of cutting off here. What this says here is an advanced search capability, so it's going to bring you in. By default, it's going to come into all calls for the last 30 days that may be in the system. I'll take this back up because it's got to be small for you. So it gives the ability to be able to search calls by incomplete, complete, or they can search just only those incidents that would be related to them. And it defaults to the last 30 days, but I can take that last 30 days this year, this and last year, and all time. So of course, if you do all time, if you've got 6 years worth of data in there, it's going to bring every one of those incidents forward. So it defaults to 30 to see if I know what my incident number is. I could put in, like any one of these, I do the 2015 dash and then put the incident number in there. It'll search. This patient care report is for incident or for medical patient care reports. So if you knew that had one of those and had a number associated with it, either one of those would get you. And here's a good example of you can see the status of from incomplete to complete and reviewed. Only these in the green would be, if I was ready to do an PennFIRS import for this date range, only these would go. It wouldn't allow you to import anything as complete or incomplete. The advanced search, which, sorry, that's a little bit covered up there, but it's a great option if somebody comes in and they want to report and they can't tell you a date, or they do know an address, or a person involved, something about an incident. They can come in, or you can search for how many times have we had a response to a particular address, or any of these other type of cause of ignition that's down there. A lot of these are related to if you're running your data to do reports and things, and you have your date range or whatever filters you're wanting to put on to look at only those incidents. You can go under the single record search. If I'm going to do a new incident, that's where I would get in. I would check new there, and that's going to take me to this. Now, once we come into this, you can see anything red here other than those fields we may have toggled on. That's what's going to be a required field. So we're going to go for today. It's typically what they're doing is they're filling it out, and then whatever their incident number is. Dispatch room number is related to, if you have that toggled on as being red, of what your dispatch center would give the number for that response as well, that may be different from your incident number, or it might be the same. Incident type, we're going to take, we had a fire, but let's call it a car fire. You can see from our thing here, the PennFIRS tabs comes up. When I was up on top, I found the category. That takes me down, just further drilling down into that field of the 100 series for the fire. For this one, we're going to say we had a passenger vehicle fire. And you can check it as aid given or received, that or hazmat. Here you'll notice I haven't got many tabs, but that's going to change. I have two options here. I can hit save and it'll save me on this page, or I can hit next, which will also save it and take you to the next tab in the incident. But for our demonstration here, I'm going to do this. You'll see the tabs that opened up that are the first one we've completed, so it's green, meaning it's PennFIRS compliant. It's got all the required information in there. Even though I can have fields blank, at least the PennFIRS part is filled out. Now I've got two options to go through. I can hit the next tab, taking me to the next one, or I could have gone up here and hit it. So sometimes when you've got all these completed and you just see one tab left, you can go straight to that tab and hit it. Here's where you'd put in if you had people involved. This may grow based on the type of incident that you had. If I'd hit structure fire, I'd have had some more options about information I wanted to put in. If I wanted to record information about people, and this is an important tab because if you're going to search on somebody in an incident report based on their name, it's got to be under this tab. If it's in the narrative just as a free text, somebody's name and number, you can't search the reports. You literally have to go through and read the incident report to get it. So we're going to say we have people we want to track. Under 18, if you have a person, it'll just bring up some questions related to juvenile on that one that PennFIRS asks. We'll say this is unintentional. It's going to have you put a cause of ignition in there. It does, some people are wanting it to see, well, how about if it's undetermined, that still would just go into the cause under investigation category that PennFIRS looks at it. So when I hit the next tab on that and go, you'll see that turned that green. It also brought up the people tab. So as I'm putting codes in there, it's recognizing that, bringing them up if it's applicable to that type of coding. The street address, you can see PennFIRS just requires the street. I'll say it was 600 South and that here in Kennewick. Okay, so I've got that, what PennFIRS requires. If I want to put in all these other codes, I can. As soon as that address is in, it'll validate that when I hit save, the lat and long on that. But you'll have this other thing PennFIRS requires is what's the property use. Well, we're going to go to outside property. This ended up being a street. I know there's one for residential street, which is where this is. Address would be, if it was a parking lot, it would be in here. There we go, residential street. And I'm just going to walk through that tab. What I'm going to do now is kind of go through here, and this is where you would add apparatus. We'll just due to our time, seeing we're up on 5 o'clock and with questions, this is where I'd walk through the report, add my apparatus. The times I would go through here and add it on this side, and then I would go over select the people that were on the call. If you've got CAD that's importing that, this is all would be filled out for you. But you can put then who was on that call or on this this engine, and I can also give them a role as to what they did. Let's say fire extinguishment. As soon as I save that, I can do multiple roles if I want, but I would save it like that, and then I would go on. If I needed to save, it'll take me back to, if I want to add another apparatus, it'll take me back. That's where I would just go through the process again and do it. Now, if I go back, it's going to show me the grid, the tab. I hit 3 different apparatus in there. This red shows that I haven't got any of the time, so it's not PennFIRS compliant. all I would have to go in on any one of these and edit it. The other two I didn't assign an apparatus to, so I can do that. Once it's complete then, and I put my people tab in there as you're walking through there, you'd be able to do that to add a person. Here's where I would go. Put, if they're the property owner, put in there and whatever information is specific to their people tab there. Narrative is where I can do my free text narrative to get in there, where the officer can do that, and it is a spell check in there which they can have, but if it's the same general narrative, that's where if you have multiple engines here, we required each officer would get in and do a basic narrative of a sentence or two or paragraph, whatever would be appropriate. They would just come and this person would get in and put their narrative and their name of who was doing it. Files is where you can get in and get into the files. You can set up, this is where you can put photographs, videos, anything that's related to that incident. If a citizen walks up and has a video on their smartphone, I'd have them email or text that to me. You can put it in there. The firefighters, or in part of the investigation, we'd have files. We can upload files in there, and up to 20. That's just because of the speed time. If you have large files in there, you're trying to do it, you can have the system time out just simply because it depended on your connection speed to the internet as to how fast that'll go. And so the files are under there. This is the authorized tab. I have a ton of stuff I skipped over I didn't put in. The nice part about this is it's going to tell me the estimated number of residential living units I didn't have in, or buildings that were involved. They're all tabs that I passed over, but if I hit on any one of those, it'll take me right back to where now I can say, well, it's not residential, it's not that, and I could continue doing that and check that. That'll go green. I can walk through it, or I can go back to the authorization tab and keep picking these off. I just didn't add any apparatus, and that's why this is so long here with that. But I'm going to go to the main grid of incidents here just for the sake of time here and show you once that incident, if I had completed it, and it's going to allow me to authorize it then, where my password would have gone in as the user, it would have come up complete. And then the same thing if somebody gets in, like this one would be waiting for review. I would do the same thing with authorizing it, putting my password in. Now it locked that call, and I can go back to add in another incident, or if I want to return right to where I was at, I can completely log out of the system or go to the main incident screen. If I go here, it's going to take me back to that incident. That's how I would print it if I wanted to include my personnel. I could look at that. There's the incident report that's in there, and would have everything applicable to that incident. It's when you say print, it's going to take it to the screen. It's not going to automatically say, won't send it as you print in our system to a printer. If I want to do that, I can do a right mouse click and print it, or I can go to my browser here where I'd have my options to hit print there. So if you're hitting print, it's just going to take it up on the screen, and you can tell it if you want to do a hard print after that. And we've got questions. Lindsay, thank you very much. I see you're knocking those questions out as people have asked them. We've got a couple that are coming in. How do we, the one I see that's at the bottom to be answered, how do we select mutual aid? It's in the narrative other agencies at scene. So selecting mutual aid, hopefully I'm answering this question properly. When we go back to, I'm going to unlock this incident, and we'll open it up. So aid given or received, well, you would put there, so say mutual aid was coming in, then that would be mutual aid received. Now when I hit that, and now I go to the next tab, it's going to, when I get to the fire tab, it's going to then have me put in what agency that was that came in. Here you can see the mutual aid apparatus that would have come in on this call, where if I'm utilizing the agency friends part of our system that we can do, track those mutual aid apparatus that once they've closed it, it'll show it. But that's where when you do the mutual aid received, then it'll actually have you put information in under the fire tabs as to where you go in and select what that agency was that provided mutual aid. And I hope, Ted, that I answered that question fully of what you had there. And Lindsay may be able to help me with this one better. It says, when will the system be up and running for the volunteer fire departments? It is up and it's up and going. You get set up through your state fire commissioner's office on there. Now, we did have some agencies that got signed up. Now, with them doing the import, if they're going to import your previous run data out of, if you were on, say, the PennFIRS system that used Firehouse, we'd recommend setting your system up after that import comes in, because that's going to bring up you bring in your apparatus, your personnel, and it may overwrite anything that you have in there. So it's important that sign up with them, get logged in, and then wait for them to do that import to be able to have it, to avoid getting up, setting up, and having it overwritten. And what we also have learned as well, that as of July 1, there may be a cost to doing that out of Firehouse. That system there, I believe, that contract expires then, so we are recommending before July 1st to pull your data out when it's still free. There may be a cost to it after that, but certainly your fire commissioner's office can help you with that. I know they've got a lot of good information on their web page that I pulled and looked at, to where you can go and ask those kind of questions and get assistance from them as well. And I'm looking at our further questions. And setting up that agency friends, with that's where you would go to under the administration module, where these agency friends that can access our data. And here's the ones that I have. You need their FDID number. And this is where, once you go, if I want a new agency that can select my data, I would hit add, their agency name, their FDID. Right now it's limited agency friends by state. So it'd be anybody else in Pennsylvania, but typically that's going to be your local responders there. So unless you're right on the state border or something and sharing mutual aid with that, it works just fine. Here's where you can give them none or read only, and allows for those apparatus lists, personnel, and their times, like I had it on the one report, to come through. And so that's back to agencies that can access your data, and it would be the same thing if you wanted to go into that you're able to access them. So this shows as well. So you contact that agency. I've seen some where they've accessed one agency, the other agency wasn't interested in doing that. So you don't have to select that, but if you're going to pull from their database, they've got to give you permission in the same way on yours. And I see here, adding personnel to the report, do they have to be on a specific apparatus, or can you add them separately? In the incident reports, you can add someone separately. Sorry, just for the sake of time on that, I kind of brushed right through that. That's on the tab. I think it's, let's see if I can jump right to it. Right on the basic tab 4, this is if they're on an apparatus and you're going to assign them to that. If I understand the question right, this could be other personnel, whether it's somebody off duty, or if you're a volunteer agency and you have people responding in their private vehicles to the scene. That's where you can have it and put someone in there. That the list, then you'd go in, pick whoever that was on the scene. What that allows you to go through the same process as on the apparatus, save them. Now they'll show up in your list when you're there as on the scene, and being able to do it so you can show, you won't track their vehicle times and all that kind of information you'd have on apparatus, but it'll show them there, and you can give them the list of what activity they performed at the scene. And is there a report in the system that would track mutual aid? And that's under the reports module. And yes, on that. What's handy on here is you can see top 20 reports are just the system recognizes people getting in there, or the agencies that get in there and pull information. What's the most popular that people are utilizing? So it's kind of helpful to look through that. But on this one, I'm going to go to incidents under report. Now it'll give you, and under aid given, aid received. Say if you wanted to see mutual aid by automate received for a date range or by a zone, and that's where you can go in and select. I don't know if I've got any in this test account that'll do it, but let's create this report to see if I've gone out, and that's it would give me, if I had any in there, give me the incident number, date, and location, and the aid type. So the more information you have in your system with this test account, I've just got about 20 incidents, so I don't have any good examples of that. But I might be able to go back to this. I don't have it by zone. So at any rate, it's going through and finding off of that main reports page, just those reports. This is everything that you'll have on there under the different modules, and even under the fire section, there's a different information that comes in. You can search by keyword to find a report too. Say like on this one, if I just type in the word aid, let's see if that pulls a series of reports up. Right. You can go walk right down through it. Now, if I see this report and I want it, I can either go up and I can put 327 in here, and that would give me that report, or I can just select that and have it. And in your reports, if you want to see the reports that are in the system, you can type by keyword too. We have a master reports list. I believe it's going to be report 779, but if I list master reports, I see that. Don't recommend printing it because it's got over 1,600 reports that are in here, but this is where you can come in and look at that master list. I don't think my screen, it gives me the ability to increase the size of that too much, but here you can see daily roster, what you're putting in there in the day book, and then it'll get to, here's where incident starts, and that's where you can actually look at this and see, okay, what is this number report? This document ID is the number of the report. What does it give me? So you can either search by keyword to find it, or look at the master list, or go into the reports, the incidents, and go down the list that it would have there. Take my screen back down. I'm just looking at our questions here. So I think we've answered the mutual aid one, hopefully. Are we able to access monthly number of calls for each firefighter? I'd have to go back and look for the reports for personnel. Let's look and see if incidents under the, and Lindsay, if you know of any reports that are on there, I may have to do a little research on that one to see if we can actually do it by person to be able to see on that one. So I'm sorry, Randy, I'm not able to right off the bat. I know you can track information like that through the payroll module that we have. You can set up to where it tracks their hours and the calls they were on and the position. So I'm used to doing it there, but as I'm thinking about it with the PennFIRS setup, I would need to do a little bit of research, and I'm happy to do that and see if I can find a report that would track that personnel. So I'm going to do that and plan on that'll be on my list for email to get back to you in the group is, can you do that? I do know if you have payroll, then it will track that, but I'm not sure about the PennFIRS account. Let's see, so are your zone, the zone you set up as your mutual aid areas. So your zones, like an incident reporting, that can certainly be your mutual aid area. It's whatever you want it to be as far as, and what we're talking about here is like your zone list. This is just a geographic area you can have there as an example, but a lot of agencies, they want the different mutual aid areas. If I was going to add a zone, because I could delete any of those, you could have your mutual aid area listed right here. That would give you the ability to go back and, you're right, track it by your zone would be your mutual aid area, or it could be geographic areas of your response district and neighboring ones that if you did have zone numbers or definition that way, it doesn't limit you. You could set that up any way you want. And again, on these, if you didn't want these, you could delete them or edit them. Okay, and Lindsay got the next one. What would you recommend we open the program in? Does it run better on Firefox or Google Chrome, or does it matter? And as Lindsay is saying there, it runs well in either Firefox or Chrome. Most of the users are using Chrome. I know on my iPad, it always is very dependable on that, but if you're on a browser and you're able to select it, Internet Explorer, for whatever reason, there's just that browser where there's a lot of difficulty in that. you'll get the most errors in there. In fact, as I joined with the trainer, I thought it was a long-standing bug in the system where I'd go to save a file like a photo, and I thought the error message I got, it was going to dump me out of the program. It didn't. It still saved what I wanted it to do, but when I hit the back button, then I would see my information. I always thought it was a problem with emergency reporting. I would later learn that that's a problem with Internet Explorer, because I can do the same thing in Firefox or Chrome, or on my iPad I don't have any issues with it. So definitely we recommend, I would recommend Chrome or Firefox to run it to have it run its best. And let's see, just going down through there on this program, how do you know if your report went to PennFIRS, or is there a send button? I actually have, I got to give credit to Pasco Fire Department, a local agency here that allows me to get in and use their system as a demo. So this is from Pasco, Washington, their export history. So if you're going to go in and do an export under the administration module, you'll get this screen here, and that's where I can go in. Hopefully you're able to see this. It tells me that what month that I've put in there if I want to create a new report and update it. So May of 2015, you can see that they have still waiting in the queue or in their system 421 calls that could be exported. They have 11 that wouldn't be exported because they're not yet reviewed. So we'll get in there, they'll close those out and do them. So it wouldn't even allow me to pick that as a month to send, since I've got some that haven't been reviewed. But if you're in this category where you've got need to be exported and reviewed, like here, I could go and actually 307 there where they've got exported, that's one they've already done. But if I had one category, I guess it was the December 2013, there's still a call holding out there that could be exported. Allow me to select that one. Say if I did that and I hit export, it would be going, and here's who it would be going to. This is their admin that would get a copy of it, as well as to the emergency reporting is that who does it in Washington State here, that we send to them, and then through off to PennFIRS. So it depends on, that's set up in there. So that's how you do the export to have that, and then your history. So you'd have the email with that history, but here's the history of where they've sent theirs. If there was ever any question, they can pull it up, resend it if they need to, download it, and the receipt on it that tells when it went out, who received it, number, the incidents, and so it's a very a great feature of emergency reporting, the exports, being able to track it and have that data that in case something got crossed up on it, that you could resend it or have an accounting of it. And still looking back, and I think I'm looking at them. Lindsay, is there any questions that have not been answered yet in the system here, or that we have it? Please let me know if you see them, but it looks like we've answered them. I'm going to want to do the research on the question as far as being able to, on the instant report, pull out a report based on the individual there to see how many calls they've got on. So I'll do some checking on that and get back with an answer on that. But I sure want to thank everybody that was on here today. Sorry we ran over a little bit on time, but it was great dialogue. I think well worth it. And we're here for you. Again, we want to have this transition be a smooth one, and welcome to the emergency reporting family. We're really pleased with our relationship with PennFIRS and know that it'll be a successful one, and that'll be because of all the great users like yourself out there that set it up and make it run right every day. So thanks again for that. We appreciate your time tonight, and there's other sessions coming up that feel free to take advantage of those that you can sign up for on the list that's out there, and feel free to join us again, whether it's myself or another trainer, to walk through it again. We'll just keep doing this until everybody's questions are answered. And thank you very much, and have a great night. Bye now.